Hello guys, my name's John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and today I'm reviewing an animated movie. I think it's the newest one in DC animated universe, namely BatmanHush. Now, BatmanHush is based on a very popular and very famous comic of the same name, and bef- before watching the movie, I actually read the comic for the first time ever. Like, it was always on my list of comics I really, really want to read, but somehow I never came around to doing it. But when the movie got announced and I saw the trailer and everything, and I thought, okay, you're gonna finally read this thing before you watch the movie. So that's exactly what I did. I got the comic, I read it, and after that, I immediately watched the movie. So I'm kind of going into this a bit from like comparison point of view, which I am kind of sorry for, which I'm gonna explain in a second. Okay, so in BatmanHush, Batman is kind of followed by a new sort of villain whose face we don't see because it's all bandaged up, and he's sort of like a stalker kind of character, and Batman notices that someone is I don't know, following him because things start not going well, and he follows a trail that brings him across all kinds of Batman villains we know. Like, it starts off with it's Killer Croc in the comic, it's Bane in the movie, I think, but then it goes on to like Catwoman, Poison Ivy. He also goes to Metropolis and has to deal with Superman. And yeah, it's basically him trying to find out, okay, what's bringing all these supervillains together, who's orchestrating this, and who's manipulating my life. Okay, I'm trying to keep this mostly spoiler free, so I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the comic and the movie independently at first, but I'm gonna go into some comparisons and maybe even spoilers at the end, but I'll give you a warning beforehand. So starting off with the comic, I love the comic. I thought it was very interesting. It was a very suspenseful storyline. I really wanted to know what was going on. Even though some of the stuff was predictable, like I pretty much called who Hush was in the first issue. So I was like, it's probably that person, isn't it? And it turned out to be that person, but that was no problem because it was still a good reveal, and there were some very interesting twists and turns during the story. I don't know, I just really liked the exploration, especially of Batman's character, because there were also some psychological things here and there. Um, and the villains also were interesting. I was a bit disappointed that the Joker wasn't that much in it, but he has a very good moment in this comic that I thought was very, very interesting, especially if you look at how Batman is taking it in that moment. If you've read the comic, you probably know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I thought it was a very good comic, very interesting, some good reveals, some good twists and turns, and yeah, definitely go read it if you haven't. Okay, so the movie I thought was okay, but it was not what I expected. Okay, so I'm trying to keep this as independently as possible because I think if you have not read the comic, if you don't know it, and you just watch the movie, I think you're gonna have a good time with this. If you have read the comic and kind of compare to the movie, or just keep the comic in mind as you watch the movie, I think you're not gonna like it as much. But the movie stays mostly close to what happens in the comic. Like, the general storyline is the same. Some of the reveals are the same, and they work pretty well. I think for like the movie as it is, I think it works. And some of the changes they made are also, I think, due to the fact that this is like part of the DC animated universe, which is like its own timeline thingy as far as I understood it when I read up on this. So of course there are gonna be some changes, but I think they are alright, like with some of the characters. The animation is good, it looks nice, the fights are pretty cool, I thought, because I like them in the comic too, and they work well in the movie. The voice acting is good, like basically all voice actors that are in this movie you know from other DC animated movies, so they're doing a good job. So if I would have to rate this movie as it is, without comparing it, I think it's good. It's not brilliant, but I think it's good. It's a solid piece of work, and you have a good time watching it, I think. And I like how they explore the characters in this, especially Batman, also the relationship between Batman and Catwoman, which was also a big part in the comic, and I thought that was the best thing in this movie. So, yeah, if you watch the movie just that, no comic, whatever, you're gonna have a good time, I think. Okay, I'm gonna complain a bit now, because now I'm gonna compare the movie and the comic, and I'll probably have to give some spoilers away, so here's your warning if you want to read the comic or watch the movie without any spoilers. So here's the thing, if I had to rate this movie with the knowledge of what actually happens in the comic and how this movie works as an adaptation, I would not rate this movie as good as I just did. Like, if I had to rate it from like normally without the comic in mind, I would maybe say, I don't know, 7 out of 10 maybe. But like, if you know the comic and you compare it, it's, I don't know, it's maybe like a 5 out of 10 if I'm being generous, because there are just so many things where I kept wondering, why did they change this, or why did they cut this particular thing out, or oh, this worked so much better in the comic. Okay, a couple of minor things they changed. Like, some of the characters were changed, which I didn't quite understand. Like, in the beginning, it's Killer Croc in the comic, who Batman fights and rescues the boy from. In the movie, it's Bane. Like, I don't know why they had to change that. I don't know, because people are more familiar with Bane, I guess? I don't know. Also because I kind of liked how Killer Croc worked in that story, because they talked about his mutations and that he was changing a lot, that he's a lot more aggressive. They tried to do this with Bane too, with saying he has a new venom toxin thing he uses, but I don't know. I just didn't get why they had to change that, because why? Also, Batgirl's in this. Like, she's also in the comic, but not as Batgirl. It's Oracle. And in the movie, Barbara is still active as Batgirl. I don't know if that is because of that DC animated movie timeline, I guess, but I don't get it. Why Batgirl had to be in there, because I liked how Oracle worked in the comic. Nightwing was in it that I thought was okay. For some reason, Damian had a short cameo in the movie. Like, for no reason. He's in it for like one scene for 2 minutes to tell Batman off. No, actually to tell Batman to use protection if he has sex. And I'm like, what? He's not in the comic. Like, in the comic you have Robin, you have Tim Drake. And I thought his role in the comic was actually quite interesting, because he's very distrusting of Catwoman and kind of tries to look out for Batman and is very suspicious of everything that's going on. And I thought that worked rather well, because he kind of questioned everything that was going on. And he's not in this movie. I assume maybe because Tim Drake is not in the DC animated universe. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it, to be honest. But yeah, there were just like a bunch of characters that are in the comic that are missing from the movie. With some characters I think that worked. Like, now I can't remember her name. She was in the comic. Give me a second. Huntress, like, she played a bigger part of the comic. She was not in the movie at all, which I can kind of understand, because I guess the story also works without her in it, so that was fine. Another character who was in the movie but had a lot bigger part in the comic was Bruce Wayne's friend, Dr. Thomas Elliot. Like, what? Why was he even in the movie? Like, I don't get it. Like, because, sure, in the comic it's pretty much obvious that when this random new main friend of Batman is introduced, I was immediately like, he's gonna be Hush, right? So, yeah. But I think it still worked, and it was a good reveal and everything. Like, he's his friend and he saves him, but he still kind of has this grudge against him. Then it turns out he's Hush, but it's also kind of a fake out, and it was really, really interesting. And in the movie, it's like during the first couple of minutes, I was wondering, okay, he's in this, but they're not building him up in any way whatsoever, because I knew what was going to happen to him. And like when his role in the movie is done, I was like, this has no impact whatsoever. If this reveal later is going to be him being Hush, that's not going to work at all, because they didn't build up his character. And yeah, in the movie, Hush is someone else, or sort of, but you didn't have this plot twist reveal thing, and his whole character in the movie was useless. And I was like, why was he even in this? He had like 2 scenes with some really silly jokes, and that was it. And I was like, why are you even here? So the thing about Dr. Thomas Elliot is he gets killed, seemingly, in the comic. He gets killed. And this is the moment when Batman sees the Joker for the first time in a while. And I absolutely loved this moment in the comic, because as soon as he sees him, everything comes back to Batman's mind. Everything the Joker has ever done to him, all the psychological problems Bruce Wayne had to deal with in the past. It's not just stuff that had to do with the Joker in general. It just flips him off. It triggers something the moment he sees him and hears this laugh, and he completely freaks out. He thinks about what happened to Batgirl, like what happened during that whole storyline, and she got shot. What happened to Jason Todd, and he got killed by the Joker, like all the horrible things the Joker has done, and Batman just snaps and like he punches him almost to death, and he has to be stopped. And it's really hard for him to stop. Like, he nearly kills him, and you know that he, in a way, he really, really wants to end it with him in that moment, but he doesn't. And I don't know, he keeps thinking about that a bit as the comic goes on, and I thought that moment was so good in the comic. That's literally just the only moment the Joker appears in this whole thing, apart from a later scene, but it's pretty short. But I thought that was such a good moment. And in the movie, this doesn't work at all. Like, sure, Batman freaks out and punches the hell out of him, but it nowhere near has the same impact as in the comics, because A, Batgirl is still around. She has not been shot. She's not Oracle. So that didn't happen. So killing Joker apparently did not happen in that timeline, or at least not yet. I don't know. So that impact's gone. And sure, he sees Thomas Elliot dead as well, but like I've explained, his character was not built up at all or fleshed out, so I didn't really feel this emotional connection, or in the movie I couldn't understand why Bruce Wayne was freaking out so much about seeing his best childhood friend dead. In the comic that worked so much better. So when Batman freaks out in the movie and almost kills the Joker, it doesn't feel right. It comes a bit out of nowhere, I thought. Because, yeah, sure, I get that he hates the Joker, and Batman has a lot on his plate right now, but then he freaks out like this and almost kills him and has to be stopped by Commissioner Gordon. Just didn't work as well. Just didn't, and I did not like it. Something else that they cut out of this movie, I'm not sure if I like it or not, but I think I should address it, is that the first time Hush is revealed, sort of, it's revealed to be Jason Todd, who has come back from the dead. And this just unsettles Batman, as you can imagine. So I thought that was quite interesting because again you had like this psychological thing going on because he thought, no, Jason Todd is dead, he can't be alive, and I know it's my fault that he died, and you know all that classical Jason Todd Batman stuff. And sure, in the comic, it turns out to be a fake out, and there was it Clayface? I think it was actually Clayface or someone who pretended to be Jason Todd. But I think it was quite interesting from like a psychological point of view that they put this in there, and I can understand why it's not in the movie. I don't, like I said, I don't know if they did the whole death in the family thing with Jason Todd in that storyline of the DC animated movie universe. I don't know if they did that, if that's a thing. I can understand why they cut it out because also in the comic it's not that big of a thing in the end, I thought, but it worked quite well for this first kind of fake out who Hush really is. So I thought that was actually kind of interesting in the comic, but I can understand why they did not have this in the movie, but I thought I'd mention it. So in the comic and in the movie, it turns out that the big villain, the mastermind behind all of it, is actually the Riddler, and I thought that's a great reveal. I thought it was really cool because they had this little foreshadowing thing in both the movie and the comic, I think, where Batman stops the Riddler during a bank heist or something, I think, and he's like, this is actually pretty ordinary. He's like the only villain who does not seem to be involved in this whole plan with all the others. Was he not worthy, or why is he not in it? Like, the Riddler is just acting as he always does. And in the end, that's because he was actually the mastermind who orchestrated all of this, so of course he would not get the special attention because he had to orchestrate everything. So I thought that was a really cool reveal, but it turns out that it is actually the Riddler who did it. But again, works better in the comic, because in the comic, sure, you could call them fake outs, but in the comic I think it was a lot more interesting that you weren't always quite sure who it was. Like, because you also have kind of a fake out with Harvey Dent maybe being Hush. I get why they cut him out of the movie, because in the end Harvey Dent did not have that big a role in this whole thing. I thought it was interesting that he was in it, in the comic, but, you know, it's okay to cut him out. But again, you had kind of this opportunity with him to think, oh, maybe he's actually Hush. And then, oh no, it's Jason Todd, and oh no, it's Dr. Thomas Elliot, the best friend who we thought was dead, and he wasn't actually dead. And then at the end it's like, no, it was actually the Riddler, which was so brilliantly foreshadowed, and in the comic I was like, oh, that's good. I thought it was really good. Even though I called that Thomas Elliot was Hush, I like that they still had this big mastermind kind of character, and then it turns out to be the Riddler. And I was like, oh, that's why he wasn't noticed. Ooh, that's good. I thought that was so cool in the comic. And in the movie, I still think it's a good reveal that it's the Riddler, because they also have this foreshadowing scene earlier in the movie. But the movie doesn't give you so many other possibilities of characters to think who might be Hush. Like I said, Thomas Elliot does not get developed in this movie at all in any way. They cut out Harvey Dent, so that's not working. The Jason Todd thing also doesn't happen. We don't have Clayface pretending to be one of the Hush personas or one of the other persons. Sure, we have Clayface pretending to be the Riddler, but then it just turns out, yeah, okay, the Riddler is Hush behind the bandages. And I don't know, I guess it works if you haven't read the comic. Like, that has still a big impact where you're like, ooh, that's good. But if you know how the reveals work in the comic, it doesn't feel as good. Okay, to sum up this review, I think BatmanHush, the movie, is maybe more a story that is inspired by the comics or takes part from the comic instead of a straight up adaptation. Because if it was a straight up adaptation, it wouldn't really work at all. Because sure, they kept the basics, but I don't know, like the essence of the comic, what made BatmanHush so cool and so thrilling and so interesting, is just not in the movie. What really works in the movie, I think, which I also like in the comic, is the relationship between Batman and Catwoman. I thought that was brilliant. That was the best part. It was good. I like the dynamics there. The fight scenes were good. I like that they kept the whole mini plot line with Clark Kent, aka Superman. That was kind of cute. They kept that in there. It's still a good reveal with the Riddler. That's good, I think. And like I said earlier, if you have not read the comic or try to keep the comic out of your mind as you watch this movie, I think it's a solid piece of work. Like I said, it's not fantastic, but it's solid enough, and you can give it a watch. So yeah, in the end, I was disappointed by the movie. Um, it's okay. I don't regret that I watched it, but I had hoped for more, or I don't know, just something else, I guess. So those are my thoughts on BatmanHush, the movie. Have you seen it or have you read the comic? Put your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you haven't done it already, you can check out my first ever video essay that I made a couple of days ago on Sherlock Holmes. So if you're curious about that, you can watch it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.